morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. This is First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. This is Nick Wright. Good weekend, boys.
Excellent.
I like that. That's what I like to hear. We all got a little sun. We are starting the week off strong. Russell Westbrook might have to give up his point guard duties. Steph Curry's got his eyes set on a fourth title. We are going to start, though, this morning with one Anthony Davis. The Brow officially announced as a Laker at his introductory press conference on Saturday. And when you pair a former number one pick and six-time All-Star in Anthony Davis next to arguably the best player of all time in LeBron James, you'd think the rest of the roster would just fall into place. But there was no falling here. The Lakers strategically built a talented team around the two stars. And if you ask Anthony Davis, he'll tell you it's a pretty unstoppable team, too.
I like our roster. I like, every player that we have, from 1 through 15. Well, 14, 1 through 14. So I'm excited about it, and I'll put our roster up against anybody. I feel like that, in the 7-game series, that we'll come out victorious.
See, we'll start with you. Do you agree with Anthony Davis? Would you put this Laker roster up against anyone else's in the NBA?
Well, to be fair with Anthony Davis, the one thing that he's probably looking at is there's a couple players, Rondo and Boogie Cousins, who he started with when they were in New Orleans. He thought they had a good opportunity. He wanted to bring Boogie Cousins back when Boogie Cousins' contract was up because he felt good about the way, especially the both of them. Both of them had spectacular seasons together. So if you look at if Rondo happened to be a starter, so now I have what I had in New Orleans, plus LeBron, plus Kuz, and some of these other veterans coming off the bench. I could see why he'd think this is definitely the best roster he's ever been on. So I could understand that. LeBron's playoff experience, LeBron's championship experience being with the Lakers, I can understand that. But the thing is, we're not going to know about this till the end of the season because just like we crowned Toronto world champ, we didn't know that they were going to buy in. We didn't know they were going to have Gasol trading him late and he was going to be so effective. We didn't know. Serge Ibaka, you know something? He wants to be a starter. Will he buy in and coming off the bench? Oh, he did it. And he did it well, providing leadership for them, too, with that second unit. So they have an opportunity. But this is about winning games, it's about championship. It's not about who's the best on paper. And they're going to have to get a number of veteran players to buy in to the team concept and what is best for the Lakers. Then they have the chance to fight for a championship. And whoever wins the championship is the best team. They're not giving out no paper champs for, who's the best team on paper.
And when Anthony Davis says 1 through 14, the best roster is not determined by 1 through 14. It's really 1 through 8, sometimes 1 through 7. Because in the playoffs, that's as many guys as you're going to play real minutes. And to Chris's point, once you get past the top 6 guys 7, sometimes guys 7 and 8, are guys that are not currently on the roster. Marc Gasol was one of the 4 most important Raptors. He was not on the roster at the beginning of the year. We know the Lakers, while they might not be able to make a midseason trade, they will be active in the buyout market, whether it's Kyle Korver, Andre Iguodala, or someone we haven't discussed. So when I think about the Lakers roster, it's how do their top 6 guys that are on the roster right now compare to the other best teams in the West? So the Lakers' top 6 guys, regardless of position, LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kyle Kuzma, Danny Green, Boogie Cousins, Avery Bradley. That's not talking about Rondo. That's not talking about KCP.
I like
just
that.
Their top 6. So the top 6 for the Clippers, Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams, Pat Beverly, Montrezl Harrell, Mo Harkless. Now, you can make an argument defensively for the Clippers. I think offensively the Lakers seem to be the stronger unit. What about the Rockets, though? Harden, Russ, Eric Gordon, P.J. Tucker, Clint Capella, Austin Rivers. That's a team where if the Harden and Russ thing, that's a big if, fits, everyone else knows their role exactly. Philly has 6 strong guys. Now, their problem is they only have 6 strong guys. They desperately need to be involved in either the trade market or the buyout market. So I don't think right now there is a clear-cut best roster in the NBA. That's why it's the most wide open it's been, as you said, in 15 years. That's why Vegas doesn't have a clear favorite, because we don't have a Warriors. We don't even have a Cavs of a few years ago where it's like after the Warriors, the Cavs are clearly the best. There's to me, 5 teams in the Lakers, Clippers, Rockets, Sixers, and Bucks, you can make a really strong case for. And then there's the Jazz and the Nuggets who are saying, don't forget about us. We really do go 10 people deep. So that's when you got a quarter of the league that I think if we did Family Feud style, you would get at least some votes for. That's where it's this wide open. But the Lakers roster, what it does have, if people know their roles, is, I believe, the most upside of any roster in basketball.
Because definitely Denver, Utah, they're going to play a more of a team concept.
Yes.
And you know those teams are going to buy in. Portland, on the outside of that, they're going to have big buy-in from their roster because of their leadership there. So I thought you brought up some great points as far as who's going to buy in. And the rest of that roster might not in the playoffs, but it will help you get through an 82-game schedule.
Well, that rest of the roster, just real quick, that is why even if you don't have Denver or Utah, teams such as those winning the title, those teams are going to be the most likely to have the path to the title go through their stadiums. Because while I'm only worried about 1 through 7.5 for the playoffs, through the regular season, it really is 1 through 11 or 12. And those teams that have legitimate, viable rotation players as an entire second unit. That's how the Raptors last year went 17-5 in the games without Kawhi Leonard, because they had the depth, and that's how they made sure they started out at home in every playoff series they played except for the one against the Bucks.
So you guys both echoed the same thing. Know your roles exactly to be successful on this team and buy into what's best for the team as opposed to what's best for you. But then, and this is something we'll get into a little bit later, we talk about, well, is it best for the team for a guy like Anthony Davis to play the 4 or 5? Is it best for LeBron James to play the point guard? Or is it what's best for the specific player? I think you have a little bit of a difference there. What's best for the team and what's best for the player? How do you make all of that work?
Well, Anthony Davis, for the people in L.A. who've never interviewed him, this is not anything new. And when people were saying, oh, he should play the 5, I had told you. He's always said, I don't want to play the 5. I don't want to be a 5. I don't want to be categorized as a 5. So to me, that's not new information.
But what if that's best for the team?
What's best for that player when you trade for him is what's best for that player is most important. Okay. When he came to the Lakers, they traded all those assets. Now, he will play a 5 role because there are sometimes they'll have units out there. But he has been on record. Why would you trade for someone that said, hey, I don't want to do this, and then you're getting ready to force them to do it? That doesn't make sense. That's not the star type of treatment. They should build a team around him with the respect what he's gone on record as saying a number of years ago.
And it's not ideal as far as if you were just building this team from 20,000 feet, that Anthony Davis is probably only going to finish games as the 5 as opposed to start and finish games at the 5. But Chris's point is correct in that this is not new information. The Lakers knew that, and it's something I think he is, in today's NBA, I think he would be the most devastating stretch 5 we've ever seen. But he only wants to do that in very select roles, in spot minutes, similar to what I would say.
LeBron should play in the post. I've been saying that for years. But he won't play in the post. Why? Because he doesn't want to.
The best lineup for the Lakers is honestly probably Anthony Davis at the 5 and LeBron at the 4. And that might be how they close. They might close with LeBron being the second biggest person on the court, Kuzma third, and then a couple of shooters with Anthony Davis as the 5. But it's not the position, even if it's the position I think they're best served with him playing, especially given their roster, let you have Boogie come off the bench, run that second unit. There's a lot of reasons for it. But if the guy who you are building the future of your franchise around,
if that's not what he wants to play,
he doesn't want to. And it's not like he's not effective as a 4.
Right.
He's wildly effective as a 4. I just think in today's NBA, he'd be best as a 5, but he don't want to do it. Hey, this is Nick Wright from First Things First, and you have to check out this website, Pristine.com. Pristine Auction has daily auctions with $1 starting bids. Authenticity is important to Pristine Auction. Pristine Auction guarantees authenticity, and it comes with authentication from the most trusted sources. Pristine Auctions are affordable. Most people don't think they can afford this stuff, but it's much more affordable than you think. A Dick Butkus signed Bears jersey sold for just $56, and a Mike Tyson autographed boxing glove sold for under $100. It's quick and free to register. Bidding is free, and you only pay if you win. Use registration code FTF when joining PRISTINE.com, and new users will receive a $5 auction credit. Again, you'll get a $5 auction credit when using registration code FTF to sign up for pristine.com. That's PRISTINE.com.
All right, moving on to Melvin Gordon now. Boy, he's coming off quite a year, right? The Chargers' two-time Pro Bowl running back had career highs in yards per carry, receiving yards, and touchdowns last season, all in just 12 games. Now he wants to be paid like a guy who did all those things. Gordon is in the 5th and final year of his rookie contract and is prepared to hold out, saying you can't just replace a great back. Cece, how important is Melvin Gordon to the Chargers' success?
Well, Melvin Gordon, I would say his play has been inconsistent. The Chargers are one of the most talented rosters. Now, for an offense, it gives them a great deal of balance. But to me, he hadn't played his best football. You know, barely. Last season, he averaged 5 yards a carry just to get to a career average of 4 yards a carry. So he hadn't put together the type of consistency that you want. Last season, only 9 runs of over 20 yards. So for me, you think Melvin Gordon, you think he's going to be a good receiver out of the backfield, which he is, also break off some big plays for you to help out the offense. So to me, the Chargers, you have to be careful when you're a running back. Because, yes, they did pay L. Bell. Yes, Ty Gurley did get paid. Zeke's going to get paid. But around the league, there's still a theory. I can get a running back from off the street, late in the draft. I can pick up an old veteran. Like, there's a lot of the league that still thinks that running back should be done by committee and don't believe in spending a lot of money on a running back, nor are spending high draft capital on them. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Chargers didn't sign him to a long-term contract.
Well, he has been very good when he's been out there, even if he hasn't been excellent. Like, the problem for last year, the reason he didn't have 1,000 yards is he missed 4 games. And a couple years prior to that, when he barely missed out on 1,000 yards, because he missed 3 games. The one full season he's played, 2017, he had 1,100 yards rushing and almost 500 yards receiving. One of his biggest talents is catching the ball out of the backfield. Over the last 3 years, averages about 50 catches and just under 500 yards receiving per season. And he's averaged 13 total touchdowns per season. But he is in this tough spot, which is the Chargers know he almost assuredly is not actually going to sit out and miss games. They can pay him this year $6 million, hold the franchise tag over him. And so he's in one of these positions where if a team pays him, it's not charity, but they don't have to. Like, any extra money they give him would almost just to be nice. Now, if they really think he's going to miss games, then you can make the argument, man, Phillip Rivers, year 16. We've got a really good team. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams coming off a bit of a breakout second season with double-digit touchdowns. You'll have Hunter Henry back this year. This could be a dynamic offense if you have a running back like Melvin Gordon who can run and catch the ball. But my guess is they don't take this threat very seriously. So are they going to outlay big-time guaranteed money? Almost assuredly not. Could he get a new deal that involves a bunch of essential team options and a slight raise this year? Possibly, but that doesn't look like what he's looking for.
Do you think that Pittsburgh didn't think that L. Bell would really sit out the whole season? Do you think this plays out similar to the way
L. Bell was
with
far
Pittsburgh
more important? I think the threat of L. Bell was real, but let's not forget how everything played out last year. L. Bell didn't know he was going to sit out the whole season. So he started going week by week. Then he realized him and his agent sat down and talked because he had told, remember the offensive line, that was part of the conflict, that he was going to come back and report to the team. After conversing with his agent, they decided they were going to end up sitting out the whole season. So to me, this is not the same. I wouldn't look at Melvin Gordon in the same breath as L. Bell. L. Bell's ability to dominate as a running back. He was a special running back. When we had the conversation about who's the best running back in the league, L. Bell was always included. Melvin Gordon has never been talked about until we have the holdout situation.
And to me, the biggest distinction is Le'Veon Bell was not holding out. Le'Veon Bell was not under contract. They couldn't find Le'Veon Bell. They couldn't take any money from him. He just was refusing to sign the franchise tag for the second straight year. Melvin Gordon's under contract. Melvin Gordon's in a position where if he were to skip all of the preseason and show up in week 1, he'd be down nearly $2 million in fines. And for a guy that's only scheduled to make about $6 million this year, they can fine him regular season game checks.
Yeah, because it's his option year.
Yeah, it's a weird thing in the new CBA. You can be fined up to a regular season game check for each preseason game missed, only for guys in their 5th-year option. So they kind of hold the hammer over him. In theory, if he were to sit out the whole year, he would owe them money. Now, I've never seen a player actually have to pay a team money, but unless they retire early, signing bonus money back. So he deserves more than he's being paid, and he deserves some financial security, but he has no real power over the Chargers. And sitting behind him is a guy named Austin Eckler, who in limited touches last year, about 100 carries, 5 yards per carry. So they might feel like they can get 80% of the production out of the backup, even if Melvin's not out there.
You mentioned Melvin Gordon last year didn't rush for 1,000 yards. Jenna, 16 players rushed for 900 or more yards last season. So when you don't even have 1,000 yards rushing, he's had 1,000 yards one time in his career. Like, when you're not a 1,000-yard rusher, your contract is not expiring. You don't have the opportunity to be a free agent. So he doesn't hold the hammer.
He doesn't have the
like
leverage.
L. Bell.
Right.
He didn't have the stats, and L. Bell didn't get paid on his first contract because he wasn't a first-rounder. Melvin Gordon got paid. So now on your second contract, you can't keep paying for potential. They're already giving you 4 years of what you can do, and they believe that potentially they can replace him with a couple guys. I don't believe they're going to invest long-term into Melvin Gordon.
And just real quick, the running back market, even though a few guys have gotten paid, there's only 3 running backs in the entire league making more than $8.5 million a year. Melvin Gordon's at 6, so it sounds low compared to any other position. But if you're not Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, or David Johnson, you are not making big-time NFL money playing the running back position. Zeke's trying to change that. A couple other guys are trying to change that. Melvin Gordon, if he wants to change it, almost assuredly has to play this year, play close to the full 16, play well, and then he either gets franchise tag, which will be around $10 million, or maybe a little bit less, or go out in free agency and get a contract.
Moving on, Lonzo Ball's time with the Lakers lasted just 2 disappointing seasons, but the former 2nd overall pick is excited for a fresh start alongside new Pelicans teammate Zion Williamson. Nick, will Lonzo be a good fit with Zion in New Orleans?
I actually think he's a great fit because he's going to try to push the pace, get a rebound, push it up the court. You know Zion's going to be running the court. Also, defensively, I think these two guys can be 2/5 of a very good NBA defense. And we know that Lonzo's an underrated athlete. You see it in the highlights. His ability to get above the rim, but more importantly, his ability to throw lobs to Zion when he's trying to get above the rim. And he can do it a little more under the radar than he was able to do it in Los Angeles with his dad and all the distractions surrounding him there.
He should be a good fit, but one thing to watch for, Zion can't shoot. Lonzo can't shoot.
Yeah.
Their center can't shoot. They only got 2 shooters in the lineup. So they better play with pace before teams set up their half-court defense. Nick made some good points. As far as the defensive end, they should be athletic and be good on that end. But watch the spacing on the court because, Jenna,
or J.J.
you know.
Redick's going to run himself ragged running off screens trying to get open for them.
I do know.
Oh, sorry.
Moving on to Chris Paul. When he was traded to the Thunder for Russell Westbrook last week, a lot of people thought CP3 would be quickly flipped to another team, but recent reports have OKC open to keeping Chris Paul. Nick, should the Thunder hold on to the 34-year-old?
Jenna, you know shooting is important. Is that what I interrupted? Is that what you were going to say? I think so. Oh, don't be upset with me, Chris.
Oh, no, I'm not upset with you. I'm looking at your hair on the thing. Man, you made a vast improvement. I wonder, how can you be so smart and not realize that?
What, that this is a vast improvement?
Yes.
Oh, okay. To answer your question, Jenna Wolfe, get us back on track.
Thank you.
OKC is not going to keep Chris Paul. Like, they might keep him temporarily. They might wait until the entire league can trade for him once the players you signed this offseason can't be traded till late December. So he could start the year on OKC. But OKC is not going to have this expensive of a roster to not be a contender, to not be a playoff team. So, no, he might start the year on OKC, but I would be flabbergasted if he ended the year on OKC.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely going to be out of OKC. They're going to give you enough draft picks, too, first round. Hey, take Chris Paul, and we'll give you some. Do you want anything back? back? Nope.
We're good.
No, he's got to go. It doesn't fit their model. They're in a total rebuild.
All right, to the Warriors now. They've been title favorites for half a decade, but Kevin Durant is gone. Nobody's sure when Klay Thompson will bounce back from a torn ACL, and they're all moving into a new stadium next year, and that has many wondering if Golden State can make it back to the big stage. Steph Curry doesn't wonder. He says, quote, "We got championship DNA. We know that. We've got our core when Klay gets back." It's going to be an interesting year for sure all the way around. It's going to be challenging to really find that momentum early, but with the new arena, losing the finals, this summer's a different vibe. Keeps you locked in. Nick, are people sleeping on the Warriors as title contenders? Just last week, you made a top 7. Warriors were not in it. Yeah. We were all surprised.
Listen, the idea that the Warriors are going to find themselves outside of the playoffs, I reject that. I think Steph's too good. I think Kerr's too good of a coach. I think Klay will be back at some point. But they're not finals contenders. They're not title contenders. So, I mean, if you're sleeping on them, you can stay asleep. Like, they have a very limited ceiling. Cris is really keeps harping on what type of team are they going to be defensively. That's a real question. The fit with D'Angelo Russell, that's a real question. And who is Draymond Green? Is he the player we saw in moments in the postseason last year, or is he the player we saw the entirety of last regular season, which was a very good but no longer best in the league level defender while being a hindrance on your offense? And how much does that hinder the offense those first few months of the year when Klay isn't out there, and the whole year when KD's not out there, not even to mention the emotional side of Draymond, where Iggy's gone, Sean Livingston's gone, and Draymond's waiting for that next contract. So the Warriors will be a playoff team. They, I think, when Klay comes back, can be a dangerous first-round team. But this is not a championship team. When we talk about the litany of teams in the West, that 1 through 6 are elite basketball teams, to me, the Warriors are not on that list.
And Steph is right to a certain degree. Steve Kerr, himself, Klay, who could be on the rack for at least half the season next year, and Draymond. Who else has got championship DNA? Looney? You're going to say just because he was out there on the court? No, to me, so that's the only people they have.
Right.
Like those backups and everything, they were afraid to play them. When they start getting those injuries, man, Steve Kerr wasn't like, oh, let me open up my bench. We this is what we do. We develop players. No, they haven't drafted well. They've developed any more players since Draymond got drafted, Steph got drafted, and Klay. Who else have they developed as a player? They have not, and it will hurt them this season. They're not a championship team. I think, Steph, did he mention that new arena twice in there?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, he's great. He's the best. I mean, he's the best face of a person. Oh, absolutely. Did I mention we got a new stadium?
A new arena.
Did I mention that?
From Oakland to San Francisco.
Oh, it's going to be a different vibe and everything. Oh, he's doing what he's got to do. But championship, no.
And how do guys who have been competing for championships for the last 5 years, a team that went to more consecutive finals than any organization has since Russell Celtics, how do they respond when you are into February and March and it's very clear this isn't a championship level team? Like, that is the other element of it. We've talked about the Warriors having a second gear, the Warriors amping up for the postseason. Well, when you've had 5 straight 100-game seasons,
right,
whether you're a championship level team or not this year, the wear and tear is still on you for Draymond, for Steph. Klay's going to be out at the beginning. How does Draymond get himself as amped up as he needs to be when the games feel less meaningful this year than they have at any time since he's been a full-time starter with the whole specter of free agency? And are the Warriors even going to offer me a max contract hanging over him?
There's no sense of confidence that D'Angelo will be able to keep everything in play until Klay gets back. Then it's just Klay and Steph and how powerful that duo is and how far they can take this team.
Where D'Angelo Russell going to go then? He's making $27 million. You want him to play this big role, and then as soon as Klay, where are you going to put him on the court? Like, what are they going to do defensively? They're an awful small team. And remember when KD got hurt, we gave the ball more to Draymond offensively? You bring in another guard now who is in the pick and roll and handles the ball all the time. So how does Draymond get into the offensive flow? No, this is not a good fit. It's a good fit when Klay's hurt, but But they are not a good 3-guard rotation there. No.
That arena that Steph brought up a couple times, I believe, is the biggest reason, or one of the biggest reasons, that they acquired D'Angelo Russell the way they did. They can't. We saw this team briefly, but we saw this team in the playoffs with no KD and no Clay. And the way teams guarded Steph made his life impossible. They couldn't go into a season saying, Steph, run around like it's Davidson, except with NBA-level defenders instead of mid-major level defenders. So they had to bring in another option, and they had to keep things interesting because they're opening Chase Center.
Yep.
The Warriors could, as soon as the season after this, once again be championship favorites. We'll see what they do with Draymond, see what they trade D'Angelo for, have Steph and Clay for a full season. It might just be 1 year they're down. But this is going to be
I doubt they'll be favorites.
Well, I'm just saying I'm not going to cross.
You're very, very hopeful.
Okay, but the point is that this year there's no championship level this team can get to.
Nobody happier about that than Daryl Morey. Let's talk about the Rockets now. They've made the last couple years all about beating the Warriors. They made the blockbuster trade of the offseason, swapping out Chris Paul for a younger superstar in Russell Westbrook. And with Westbrook and James Harden reuniting in Houston, two ball-dominant guys who both play the same position, what could possibly go wrong? Well, Charles Barkley can answer that, saying the only way this works is if Russ gives up his point guard duties to Harden. So, Cece, which player do you think is going to have to adjust their game more? How does this all play out?
The way for this to work is both players have to adjust. You can't depend on one player to adjust, but it has a lot to do with the skill level, the intellect, who can make the adjustments. Before you say, oh, okay, who's the better player? When we drafted Randy Moss, immediately I had to make some adjustments. Not only did I have to give up my Z receiver, which is the flanker, to the tight end side, off the ball, goes in motion a lot. I had to give that up to Randy because he was more fit to be a Z, and it was easier for him to learn the offense from that position. So was it natural for me to give it up? Yes. Was it better for Randy for me to be able to give it up? Yes. But did Randy have the ability to do anything else? No, not initially coming in. So when you look at Harden and you look at Russ, what's their skill set? James Harden be able to score the basketball at a level that we haven't seen since Wilt Chamberlain. Now, do I want to jeopardize that with Russ? Because Russ is not good playing off the ball. So I can't just make Russ play the 2-guard when his skill set is everything but a 2-guard. The shooting guard, Russ is not a good shooter. So, no, you have to be able to mix it up. You also have to be able to play at some type of pace where you don't have to set it up, and Russ can take it either off the rebound, him or Harden, because both of them are very good rebounding guards, and before the defense is able to set up. But this is a huge compromise for both the players. It's like a marriage. Sometime someone else is going to have to compromise a little more than the other. 50-50 doesn't mean equal, but both of these players have to look at their game. They talked to each other and said that they wanted this. Now let's see what they do to accommodate the other player.
Right. They both have to make the adjustments. Here's the hardest part for Mike D'Antoni and for the Rockets. And I think this was a smart trade. I think you can upgrade from Chris Paul to Russ. Player 4 years younger, you make that move when you're within Harden's championship window. But the complicating factor is this. Of the two players, the guy who can threaten a defense more without the ball in his hands is James Harden. So that you would actually be saying, Russ, keep the ball in your hands, not as much as he did in OKC, but more so than Chris Paul had it, because you still have to guard Harden if he doesn't have the ball in his hands, because he's such a threat to shoot. But Russ is obviously not as efficient as James Harden when James Harden has the ball in his hands. So what both these players must do is become better without the basketball. It's something, James, that I think frustrated Chris Paul last year.
Neither one of them are great as far as movement without the ball.
Correct.
Going on the baseline, relocating, taking a guy down, running him off a back screen. They haven't done a bunch of it, but their skill set at that is not as high as the other things they do offensively.
And the last few years, the way each of them, I believe, had justified it internally is when I have the ball in my hand, which is so much of the time I'm doing so much work, when I don't have the ball, that's my time to rest on the court. Well, this year, for both of them, they're going to have less workload as far as ball in their hand. So Russ is going to have to be hard cutting to the basket, back screening, what Cris is talking about. And James is going to have to be relocating for shots. If they do that, this can work. One of the things this helps the Rockets with is last year, what did we keep hearing Shaq and Chuck say on Inside the NBA and all about the Houston? Late in playoff games, when you just need a basket, they're still just shooting threes. When you just need some type of high percentage shot, they didn't have anyone other than Harden who could get to the rim. Russ can still get to the rim at an elite level. Russ, I think, should help them late in games as far as we don't need a three. What we need is the best basket we can find. But that it's going to take 46 minutes of them working together to get to that point.
Two problems late in games. Russ is not very good from the free throw line. Teams, will he go to the bucket knowing that he can get fouled? We've seen that with other players, that they tend to stay away from the bucket. And Russ, when he's on the point, Harden, as good of a shooter he is, he's not a good spot-up shooter. He almost dribbles the ball at least one time for every. So you don't need that as a two guard. So his skill set, even though it's good, he likes to dribble the basketball before he shoots it. So it's going to be something that's going to evolve as the season goes on, because this is not a natural fit for either one of these guards.
So that's my question. How long does D'Antoni give this trying to make it work before he just says, okay, Harden, go do what you did for that 30-game stretch last year. We need wins heading into the playoffs.
That won't work. And I don't listen. They're assuming they're not as injured as they were last year. They're not going to need Harden to be a one-man show for as long of a stretch as they did last season. But you are not going to be able to marginalize Russ the way you did Chris Paul, which is why it does take both of these guys having a come to Jesus moment together of, man, we've both done everything in this league we ever could have imagined, except for win a title. And in fact, the last time either one of us were even in the finals was 7 years ago when we played together as kids in Oklahoma City. So figuring out the push and the pull there. We saw Russ, by the way, go from 24 shots per game the year before they got Paul George down to 20. Now, 20 is still the fourth most in basketball. But last year, Paul George actually took more shots per game than Russell Westbrook. It probably surprised people, but he did. Can both of those guys take 17 to 18 shots per game instead of both of Harden last year took 24 himself. He led the league in that category. Can they both take a slightly lesser role? Because the other factor here is Eric Gordon didn't have a great relationship with Chris Paul, and I'm sure he's one of the people glad Chris Paul's gone. But Eric Gordon's also got to be thinking man, how many plays a game is going to be run for me? 1? 2, you've got to make sure Eric Gordon, who is a very important third piece of this team, feels involved as well. So listen,
this is a difficult adjustment for him. It's all everything's going to work out. I called her and everything. We're living together. We get married. Then your favorite workout outfit gets bleached, Jenna, when they wash the clothes, and you're like, you know something, man, I was better off by myself. Okay, dude averaged 36 points last year. Didn't need no type of help. So there's going to be some times, like you said, I can do this by myself, regardless of, I called him this offseason, said I wanted to play with him. Yeah, bleach my outfit and see what happens.
You and Danielle discuss bleaching your outfit. Is that one of the big fights in your household?
Nick doesn't do laundry.
You bleach my workout outfits.
I don't have a workout outfit, and I don't do laundry.
Here, first things first, we are joined by FS1 NBA analyst Cris Broussard. Cris, it's been a while.
Man, good to be back.
Having you back
Welcome
here.
back, man.
It's good to be back.
I mean, a lot's changed since you've been back.
A lot's changed. It's nice to be around some friendly
faces.
faces.
Get taller?
Didn't it?
Well, the hair,
Can you verify? Can you verify though? It is not hair plugs, and it's real.
It is definitely real. It's sharp, man.
He's not.
Serious.
That's good.
But the hair is.
It's sharp. I don't know if you like it. I don't think he likes it.
I'm a little
but
uncomfortable
it looks real
with
good.
it. But I just real quick before we get to the actual sports.
You
know what I love
real
about
quick.
Cris Carter? The only reason people thought it was hair plugs is because he said for 2 months on television it was hair plugs. And now he's like, hey, Cris Broussard.
I also told the people you were married to my sister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is another
They
one.
thought, us.
Nothing gets uncomfortable.
My sister, sister.
Hey,
Him too.
Broussard, let's talk some basketball. Things are getting weird. We haven't heard much from Giannis this offseason, that after getting bounced in the conference finals of the last season. The Greek Freak coming off his first MVP after carrying his Bucks team to a 60-win season. Isn't that enough? Asks everyone. Hardly, says Giannis. The 24-year-old believes this is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg, saying, quote, I think I'm at 60% of my potential. So, Broussard, is there pressure on Giannis to get even better after his MVP season to fill in that 40%?
No question. And if he's right about 60%, then it's
good night, everybody.
It's going to be scary. But, yeah, there's pressure on him for a few reasons. One, when you win the MVP, you put yourself in that group of players that has to win a championship now. Everybody doesn't, but when you don't follow up an MVP eventually with a title, then people begin to look down on you. Like, we've heard Damian Lillard talk about, I want to stay where I'm at. Well, as great as Lillard is, there's not that pressure on Lillard where he's got to have a ring. LeBron at a point had to have a ring. Kevin Durant had to have a ring. And so you saw what they did to get their rings. So Giannis has to get a ring. Number two, he was exposed in the Eastern Conference Finals by Kawhi without his jumper. We knew he couldn't shoot the jumper, but nobody had really been able to stop him from getting to the rim and doing the things he normally did to offset his lack of a jump shot. So he's got to improve that. And then thirdly, what does every other star on his level have?
What?
A second guy.
Oh.
LeBron, Anthony Davis, Steph, Harden now, Kevin Durant. They all have that second star. He doesn't. He's got Chris Middleton, who's a really good player, will make some all-star teams, largely because they're winning. But he doesn't have that second star on the level that the other guys do. So there is the pressure for him to keep improving, no doubt about it.
I don't think people have the expectations, too, because I remember LeBron, and I'm not going to compare what Kawhi did to him, what happened to LeBron against Dallas.
Okay. But the Spurs,
when they came back. No, the Spurs, because it was in Cleveland. With the Spurs, I wasn't too much concerned about that. But the pressure and the comparison, to me, because it was like with LeBron, what's next? Like, what's next in this game? And Giannis, it should be, well, what's next? I don't believe there's no all-NBA player that's only playing 60% of what they can play. Can Giannis improve? Will he ever be a 40% three-point shooter? All those things? Probably not. But going against Kawhi and being the MVP of the league, he should have fared better than that. Kawhi exposed him. They weren't double-teaming him. It was mono on mono. And he realizes that not only does he have to keep improving his three-pointer, but he's got to improve his mid-range game. So to me, all great players, it's a matter of what's next. And you make a great point as far as he doesn't have that other star, but he's got a collection of talent and a system that he should thrive in. I love Giannis's game. I love the fact, too, that he's not ducking, I need to get better, even though a lot of people consider me to be great.
And here's why I'm so bullish on Giannis. One is the age. He's 24. Just for some context, Chris Stapps, who he thinks young, going to be great one day, he turns 24 in a month. Karl Anthony Towns turns 24 in a couple months. Kuzma turns 24 next week. Embiid's 25. Like, guys that we think, okay, one day they'll reach their full. Giannis is their age, and he's already been league MVP. He's already been up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals before Kawhi put that claw on him and the thing went sideways. He's also, every single year of his career, his field goal percentage has gone up. His points per game have gone up. His rebounding per game has gone up. And the reason that's so impressive is not just the continual improvement, but this year he got better in everything despite playing 5 less minutes per game. He was playing 37 minutes a game last year. The season before this was 32 and a half this year under Coach Bud. So fewer minutes, more production. Now for Giannis, it's always going to be about the shooting because he can do everything else. He could have won Defensive Player of the Year. He did win MVP. He was 26% on open threes. So if he can just shoot 1 out of 3, a legitimate percentage on open threes, then guys have to come out closer to him, and then he can continue to ruin people at the rim. That's the biggest part of his game that seems the most obvious because his passing is elite for his size. His scoring's obviously elite. His defense is as good as anybody in the NBA. It's the perimeter shooting, and if he takes that next step, the Bucks won't need that second star.
Clearly, the shooting then is where you'd fill in that 40%. But when you look at the greatest players that we've been following in the last 10 years, do you put him in that echelon? Is he on pace within the Kevin Durant's, the LeBron James at this age to be this good? Or were those guys a little more completed and polished at this age?
Well, Durant Durant has kind of always been complete. You know, his offensive arsenal is just awesome. So what he needed was, you know, kind of an offensive system that better fit him and helped him to win championships. And maybe, you know, mentally he needed to get over some things too, because let's face it, they should have beat Golden State in 2016 and they couldn't do it. LeBron obviously needed to work on his jump shot. And you know, so Giannis, I like what you said about Giannis with the mid-range. He's never going to be a tremendous three-point shooter, but if his mid-range, if against Toronto he had a mid-range game, that would have changed everything. Here's the other thing. In 2021, he could be a free agent, so 2 years from now. Will he get to a point? I remember interviewing LeBron in his 4th year, and LeBron was saying, you know, I'm not going to be a ring chaser. And I'm not saying he's a ring chaser, but he got to a point where he knew he needed to win rings. He's like, I don't feel like I'll have to be a ring chaser and so on and so forth. Kevin Durant criticized LeBron, I believe, on Twitter when LeBron went to Miami. Oh, so we not competing.
Yes.
There's something to that effect. Like I said, the pressure begins to mount year after year when you're on that level. So Giannis, who right now is talking about staying in Milwaukee, being on the coaching staff and the front office when he's done playing, if he doesn't win it in 2 years or at the least get to the finals,
but it's not
that's
even
when
2
he
years.
may begin looking at leaving.
Broussard, to me, it's this year. Because what will happen is this year, after this season, they can offer him that 5-year, $250 million contract. And if he turns that down, then Milwaukee, the story next offseason will be, are they going to trade him? There is no franchise tag in the NBA. You can't let a player like this walk out the door for nothing. So that is where there is immense pressure. I think it's one of the reasons why they paid a premium to bring back Middleton, paid a premium to bring back Brook Lopez after already re-signing Eric Bledsoe early. They know they have to make the NBA Finals this year. If they win a championship, then obviously you don't have to worry about it. But at the very least, they have to get a step further, because if they offer him next offseason, when they can, the 5 years, $246, and he turns it down, then Milwaukee has to immediately start to consider what type of trade package can we get for this player. So to me, it's not a 2-year window. It's 1 year, and the pressure on Giannis, because everything up to this point in his career, Cris, has been good headlines. MVP, we didn't even kill him that much for the way they ended their season. Next year, no matter what he does in the regular season, people are going to say, doesn't matter, show it to me in the playoffs, and it will be about, can he get past Philly and whomever else is the contenders out east to get to the NBA Finals?
I love Giannis's attitude. I hope he just keeps working on his game. I hope he doesn't get consumed like people covering the game with the three-pointer, because he's never going to be a great three-point shooter. Never. He's never going to be a great three-point shooter. But if he can sharpen up that intermediate game, he can be unstoppable. Forget about where he's going to play. If I'm Giannis, I'm trying to get to unstoppable. And then when you get to a series, like against Kawhi, they have no defense for that, because the game slows down. There's more physical contact in the playoffs. And when that happened, he didn't thrive. So I don't care where I'm going in the future. If I get that mid-range game, I'm going to terrorize the other 29 teams in the league.
Back here with Cris Broussard, we're talking Lakers. When Anthony Davis was officially introduced on Saturday, people thought the toughest decision moving forward was going to be deciding which jersey number to wear. But a new concern might be brewing: where to play the 6-time All-Star. Listed as a center, AD might have a different preference in Los Angeles.
I like playing the 4. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I like playing the 4. I don't really like playing the 5. But if it comes down to it, Coach, and you need me to play the 5, then I'll play the 5. But like I said, it's the game has become so positionless that, you know, you can put 5 guys on the floor and then they just play. You know, obviously you guys seen the thing that came out about LJ running a point. Super tall, it's a super tall point guard. So it really doesn't matter. You know, just put 5 guys out there that fits best with each other and go out there and win.
I love it. It's positionless, and it really doesn't matter. That being said, I'm not playing the 5.
Right.
Just I want to make sure everybody knows that. Broussard, would it be a mistake not to play AD at the center position?
Yes, of course. I mean, he's going to have to play some center. Now, it's nice to have Boogie Cousins there to face Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid and, you know, some of these bigger lumbering centers that are on the block, and that's what AD really doesn't want to do. But he hit it on the head. Look, a lot of times it's going to be essentially positionless, and against many teams, if not most, he can and should play center. Houston with Capella, he can play center. Golden State when they go small. Or even if they have Willie Cauley-Stein or whoever in center, he can play center. Yeah, so it will be, one, to match up with what the opponent does, but two, because it's an advantage for the Lakers. He's a 7-footer, so if they go small, you still have a 7-footer who can protect the rim, who can also be your center. And I think it's possible if LeBron is at point that their starting lineup could be LeBron James, Avery Bradley, Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma, and Anthony Davis.
Yes.
Which would put Davis at the center. That's the lineup Magic mentioned as the finishing lineup.
That's their best lineup, but listen, I've been told repeatedly, because that's the exact lineup that I presented as well, and it was right before Magic put it out there. That's not how they're going to start games because of this. Because Anthony Davis does not want to be listed as the center, does not want to start games as the center. Now, I agree with you. In today's NBA, the reason he's so devastating when he plays center is you have no good options defending him.
Right.
If you put someone that, because he is so good on the perimeter, these highlights are him facing up 15 feet from the basket, big men can't guard him out there. So if you put someone on him that can guard him out there, he's going to be 5 inches taller than them, and then he can go down on the block and kill him. But that's not how he wants to play the majority of his minutes. It is, to me, the best Lakers lineup. And the other problem they run into is this. If they start a center, LeBron will start, obviously. Anthony Davis will start. Center X will start.
Probably Boogie Cousins.
Right. So call it Boogie. And then Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma would be your next two best guys. Who guards point guards? Danny Green, when he's your best wing defender, all of a sudden you start having real questions about what the lineup will look like. I think Magic was correct. That will be the closing lineup with Avery Bradley being the only question mark, depending on his health.
He can guard the point guards.
Well, that's absolutely, which is why that could be your starting lineup, but not if you also have to start a center. And the other thing that starting a center is going to mean is less minutes where LeBron is on the court surrounded by shooters. LeBron's going to start Anthony Davis in a center. Now there's only 2 spots available for shooters. Danny Green will be one of them, but Kuzma was a shooter his rookie year, not at all his second year. So that's where Frank Vogel's job immediately gets more difficult than it has to be, because this is just, I don't know if it's emotionally, physically, whatever it is, it's not what Anthony Davis wants to do.
He doesn't want to log those minutes defensively. It's not on the offensive end, it's on the defensive end. He doesn't want to guard another big center, especially if traditional, they're going to be in the low post, 15 to 20 minutes a game. And he doesn't want to be stereotyped as a center. Anthony Davis grew up in Chicago. He was a guard.
Point guard.
All right? He had a growth spurt, but he was a guard. Yeah. And we have seen players for a number of different reasons, either by height. I remember the kid, Kevin Garnett. Man, how tall are you?
6'11".
Man, you're 7 feet.
6'13".
No, 6'13".
Yeah.
They came up with that.
Why?
Kevin Durant. How tall are you?
6'11".
Why? I don't know
well,
the
for
reason.
Both those guys, it was because Garnett said, I don't want to be called a center. And if you call me 7 feet, I got to play center.
Tim Duncan wasn't a center, technically, but he played like a center.
Right. So to me, I'm not concerned about it. I think Anthony Davis did the right thing. Bill Parcells said the number one way to get your coach's attention is do what he asked you to do. And he did defer to the coach and said, if the coach asked me to play that. But we've seen this. LeBron should have been a power forward long time ago. I want him to play in the post long time ago. He wouldn't. Why? Because he doesn't want to. But when he's forced to, in certain games, you've seen it come out in him. I think the Lakers will be fine. You have to be able to find some shooters. Anthony Davis, when you are that type of player, and he's gone on record, this is not new to me. When they traded for him, I said, don't put him at center. He's always said he doesn't want to play center. And now we'll see how it plays out. I don't think it's going to affect their season.
What is the negative stereotype around playing center? Is it all the workload? Is it all you don't want to go up again defending bigs? Like, why do guys not want to play
stereotype?
center?
It's just viewed as, you're a big, cumbersome player who doesn't have all these skills.
Have the other skills.
But he's got to get over that, because the lineup you mentioned, if Boogie's in there, and I know Boogie stretches the floor and can shoot the three, But I like Boogie better on the block. I don't really want to see him out at the three-point line taking 5 or 6 a game. So if you have Boogie Cousins, Anthony Davis, and LeBron,
court becomes
yes.
small.
I mean, like if LeBron's just playing point guard, it may not be as important for him to have that open lane. But if he's playing his typical point forward, then he's going to want that lane open to penetrate and do what he does. And with that lineup, it's going to be tough.
And it is assuming that Boogie is going to be some semblance of the guy we saw at the end of the regular season and not the guy we saw post-quad injury. Now, I know he's going to be better than he was in the finals where he fought his way onto the court, and my God, it looks like he's lost 30 pounds. I mean, he looks as thin as we've ever seen him, to his credit. But if he suffers another injury, which now has to be on the board, then when you're talking about starting centers, you're back to JaVale McGee, who I know is coming off his best year, but he shouldn't be in the top 7 of your rotation if you're trying to win a title unless you have 3 superstars, and no team has 3 superstars anymore. So it does complicate things enormously. I think the biggest upside of LeBron playing point, even if it's just in name only, is that it means Rondo doesn't start, because that's another player that would constrict the court. The biggest upside to Anthony Davis playing center is it would mean between LeBron at the point and Anthony Davis at the center, you could get 3 people out there that are threats from the three-point line.
Right.
That's not how they're going to start the games. And your starting lineup, while it doesn't have to be your closing lineup, it will be the lineup that plays the most minutes over the course of the season. So it does matter, and we'll see how the Lakers can juggle it.
Talk some football. 2 years ago, the Cleveland Browns couldn't win a game. Literally, the team went 0-16. But then they drafted a Heisman winner out of Oklahoma in Baker Mayfield. And then they traded for 3-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. And then David Njoku said OBJ has been a phenomenal fit. And suddenly, the Browns, once the laughingstock of the NFL, are suddenly the hottest team. So, CC, will Odell and Baker immediately mesh in year one?
I don't see a problem. I like the fact that the quarterback has 3/4 of a season where he was the starting quarterback and he was the leader in the locker room. I'm glad he established himself as the leader before you have Odell come in there. So Odell, even though he had a relationship with Baker before he was traded, they worked out last year in Los Angeles, which a lot of players do, especially there at UCLA. So this offseason, both of them are very, very excited. I've talked to Odell. He's very excited about the transition. I just believe, too, that there's a couple familiar faces, that being Jarvis Landry and Adam Hendry, the wide receiver coach who coached Jarvis and Odell at LSU and coached Odell with the Giants. I believe that right there helps him become more familiar with that offense, gets him up to speed where they're able to move him to several different positions. And this is a good offense. They got a good offensive line. They have 2 good running backs. Going to get Kareem Hunt at middle season. So as an offense, they're as talented as offense as you're going to have in the NFL, and the chemistry, it shouldn't be a problem between Baker and OBJ.
The year before you set the NFL record of catches with Warren Moon, who was the Vikings quarterback? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I think Sean Salisbury and a couple other guys.
Okay, so what is the transition when you go from a quarterback who is doing his best but missing you a lot to a quarterback that is accurate, strong-armed? I understand Baker's not Warren Moon, but Baker is an enormous upgrade from where Eli was last season. So for Odell, what is the transition? What are the things, positives, and if there are any negatives to it?
Well, Eli Manning has a huge arm, and their inability to be able to protect Eli, it affects the quarterback. All right, so they got to be able to keep him clean, which they were able to do last season, but because he can throw the ball on the line, you can have more yards after the catch. So your reaction time, you have more reaction time to the defender. When a defender decides to stop, that ball being in the air, that's where he makes up ground. And when you have an arm like Baker has, and the accuracy that he has, especially as a young quarterback, it's a huge advantage for the wide receivers, what type of routes he can get the ball in, even if I'm not covered, if I'm double teamed. So the variety for which Baker can get the ball to him, there is no defense that you can actually take OBJ out of the game.
As a former wide receiver, you've played with a number of quarterbacks. Who do these two, maybe even talking potential, who do they remind you of young, hotshot guys that came up in the league?
I don't really think it's fair to to put that on them early. I do believe that as we move forward, they'll be one of the best duos that we have in the league. And not just because of them, because they're supporting cast. We have to understand they have a good offensive line. They got 2 good running backs. Freddie Kitchen did a great job redirecting this offense last year. They started running the ball, which led to play action. Jarvis Landry had an outstanding Njoku, the tight end. He will be outstanding. So, no, it's just not based on them. This should be one of the most electric offenses that we have, but it's about productivity. Can they convert on third down? Can they get touchdowns in the red zone? Because then all the talented players can eat. That's what becomes really important.
And there's a reason there's more preseason optimism or even hype surrounding this team than, say, when Stafford and Megatron were together with the Lions. Stafford, a former #1 overall pick. Megatron drafted in top 10 as well, I think top 5 actually with the Lions, and was an unbelievable player. But they did not have the people around him, and they didn't have the defense. This Browns team, to me, has 3 legitimate stars on defense. You've talked about the offensive line. We know Nick Chubb's, damn near a first rounder and played well last year. And then they have Kareem Hunt coming back at some point next season to add to that. Plus Jarvis, they brought him in to be a #1. Now he only has to be a #2. Njoku's a guy who showed so much natural athletic ability at the University of Miami, and if he can get the drops down, he can be one of the more prolific tight ends in football. It's the whole tapestry, if you will, that makes the Browns so exciting. It's not just that they have the best very young quarterback in football, arguably, aside from Mahomes, and the most talented receiver in the league. It's that's not going to be their only punch. That's not going to be the only way they can beat you.
The defense that the Browns will have, it will be the best defense OBJ has had when he's sitting on the bench. All right? Offensive line, it will be the best offensive line. Running game, it will be the best running game. It will be the best collection of wide receivers. I'm not going to say Baker's a better quarterback than Eli. He's got a better overall arm than Eli. Eli's got a strong arm. He's more accurate with the football and the variety for which he can throw the football. So all those things should lead to him not necessarily putting up bigger numbers, but they should be more successful as a team. Defense is better, offensive line is better, running game is better, quarterback potentially will be better, receiving core is the best that he's played on. It should be results that the kid used to be blonde hair, now it's his natural color. We should get back.
No, you know why
results.
They're going to be great.
Why?
Started my favorite show last year.
Oh, Hard Knocks.
Right?
Yeah,
the next year.
Yeah, that got the coach fired. It let everyone know that.
Yeah, but I enjoyed myself.
My
but
guy
I had
Todd
a good
Haley's
time.
still looking for work.
Hey, coming up.
Hard Knocks.
Now I kind of miss the
Took
yellow
some
hair.
people down.
It's been like 8 minutes, CP. Chargers Pro Bowl running back Melvin Gordon preparing to hold out if he doesn't get a new contract, saying, quote, "You can't just replace a great back." Chris Carter, how important is Melvin Gordon to the Chargers' success?
No, you can't. First of all, I can't answer the question. I got to respond to what he said.
Yeah.
No, you can replace a back because that's what he is. He's not a great back.
He's a back.
I mean,
he has the potential to be one of the 10 best backs in football.
Oh, but he's already been running the NFL for 4 years. It's not like the NFL. There's not a lot of people that hit their stride when they get about 28, a lot like myself. All right? Most of these guys, by year 3, if they haven't had some type of success, then typically they're not going to have a great career. A running back can be replaced. 16 running backs rushed for over 900 yards. Last year, only 6 of them were first-round picks. So you can do this by committee, off the street, free agents. Many teams still believe that's the way to go.
And to Chris's point, he wasn't one of those 16 that rushed for even 900 yards.
All right, shift to the NBA now. Lonzo Ball's time with the Lakers lasted just 2 disappointing seasons, but the former second overall pick is excited for a fresh start alongside new Pelicans teammate Zion Williamson. Nick, will Lonzo be a good fit with Zion down there in New Orleans?
I think he will be. I think there'll be less scrutiny on him. They're not in win-now mode like the Lakers were last year. Hopefully, he's healthy for a full season. But his style of play, he'll defend like Zion will, but also try to take the ball off the glass, push it up court. They want to play at a fast pace. That's where he's most comfortable. That's where he and LeBron weren't the greatest fit, as LeBron's never played at a fast pace. He wants to get up and run. We know Zion does. And the lobs that he'll be able to throw to Zion should show up on highlights multiple times a week.
Yeah, there's some things natural they do, but we talk about the Lakers, we talk about spacing. Every NBA team, Lonzo can't shoot, and Zion can't shoot. So you got to put some shooters around them, and they got to get the ball off the glass and try to play in transition before the defense is able to get set up. But naturally, as far as the lobs, the defending, both of them being elite defenders, there's some natural synergy just between the two of them.
Moving on to Chris Paul now. When he was traded to the Thunder for Russell Westbrook last week, a lot of people believe CP3 would be quickly flipped to another team. But recent reports have OKC open to keeping Chris Paul. Nick, should the Thunder hold on to the 34-year-old?
No. I mean, if they want to hold on to him until we're into December, where a team such as the Knicks could trade for him, because anyone signed this offseason can't be a part of a trade till December. So their best offer might not come around until later in the year. But the reality is, people are going to look at the trade the Rockets made much differently once they see what Chris Paul fetches. Because my guess is Oklahoma City is going to have to include,
of course,
some first-round picks to get a team to take Chris Paul off their books. And so I think they might wait until part of the year, but he's not going to finish the year in Oklahoma City. They're not trying to win right now. You're not going to pay Chris Paul $37 million to be a lottery team.
Right. They're not going to change their long-term plans. When they traded Russ to him, it was not for him to be wearing the Thunder uniform. What Nick says is a good point. As far as during the season, there's more suitors for Chris Paul. So they'll get a better haul as far as draft picks in exchange, but they don't plan on paying Chris Paul's salary for the whole season.
All right, let's end with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak, coming off his first MVP after carrying his Bucks team to a 60-win season. Should be enough, but it's not for Giannis. The 24-year-old believes this is just the tip of the iceberg, saying, quote, "I think I'm at 60% of my potential." Nick, is there pressure on Giannis to get even better after his MVP season?
100%. And I think Chris Broussard has this exactly right, which is the trajectory of the great players in the NBA are, as far as pressure and scrutiny, is we build you up, build you up. And once you reach almost your full potential, we start asking why haven't you won a championship. Giannis never had championship or bust expectations on him until this coming season. And I think the Bucks could have won the title last year. They didn't, but the idea that with Giannis at the level that he was, that they couldn't have done it, I disagree with. Now, in order for them to overcome some of the stumbling blocks that they ran into last year, Giannis has to improve the one part of his game that right now is not at least an A- or an A+, which is mid-range and three-point shooting. He doesn't have to become a dead-eye shooter, but he has to become more of a credible, spot-up, open three-point shooter, and he has to become more of a reliable mid-range pull-up jump shooter, because what we saw teams do, and Boston did it in the one game they had success against him, and then he adjusted. They packed the paint and said, we're going to let you get anywhere except for right to the rim. If he had even a 12-footer, that strategy wouldn't have worked. And then, obviously, Toronto, after a couple games, put the best perimeter defender in the league, Kawhi Leonard, on him, and it gave him enormous trouble. But I don't buy that he's 60% of his potential.
Right.
I think he's probably 90%. But that other 10% all has to do with his shooting touch and his ability to hurt you outside of 8 feet, which is the one level his game is yet to reach.
Can he win, though? We talk about the way to win in the league now is two superstars. Can he win, though, if this is what the Bucks look like going into next season without a second big star alongside him?
Well, we didn't necessarily say. We're just reporting what's going on in the league. It was about the super team. Kevin Durant leaves, and then now we're like, wow, look at all these dynamic duos. He doesn't happen to have that. He also had what Kawhi had going for him last year, as far as a good supporting cast, the system that he can thrive in. But I just think that as fans, we should just be careful as far as exerting pressure on the greatest that do what they do. If we went down the list of the last 10 MVPs in the league, typically, if you have MVP-type talent, you have the type of drive that has driven you to be able to overcome a number of obstacles. So the question is there pressure on him? No, there's not pressure on him. Man, read Giannis' story, where he came up. He had real pressure growing up. There ain't no pressure on him right now. He's rich beyond his imagination. He's taking care of his family. He just wants to get better as a basketball player. That's not no real pressure. Every year he's been in the league, he's shooting the ball better. He's shooting more. He's averaging more points. Giannis needs to stay focused on the way he's done it. building his game, adding a little bit more each year. Add a mid-range game. Don't fall in love with the analytics and think that you have to shoot more threes than you did last year. On the defensive end, he's improved so much better. He's a better on-ball defender. He's a better help defender. And he's realized that on the offensive end, I need to get out in transition. Keep improving on those things. Add a mid-range game to it. But for us to think Giannis is under pressure, no, there is no pressure. If Giannis and them had gone to the finals, what would change this offseason for him? Nothing. If they had won the NBA title, what would change for him? Nothing. Because all these guys still set out to a path that I need to personally improve on. It's baked in with the talent. I haven't seen, tell me an MVP that wasn't trying to get better and wasn't trying to be one of the best that's ever played in the league. You don't accidentally become MVP.
Well, I think Giannis, his level of effort and how much he's going to dedicate to improving his game was going to be the same no matter how last season ended. So if you want to swap out the word pressure for scrutiny, he will be discussed and analyzed and broken down differently this year than he has up to this point in his career. Because now it won't be about 60 wins, and it won't be about winning the MVP, because those things have been checked off. It will be about taking that team to the NBA Finals. So he's in a very, call it, uncomfortable position, which is any good he does up until May, nobody will give him credit for. And then it will be about what he does in a 2-week series in the middle of May, probably against the Philadelphia 76ers. That's what will determine the success of this season. Now, where there is unquestioned pressure is on the organization. Because in a couple years he can leave. Because a year from now they can offer him that max extension. If he turns it down, they're in the same position
You better get
New
something
Orleans
back for him.
which was New Orleans didn't have to trade Anthony Davis, except they knew he was leaving, so they did. So that's where the pressure on the organization is. The Bucks have been unbelievably fortunate in their organization's history. They've been able to draft 2 transcendent talents, Lou Alcindor and Giannis. Lou Alcindor left almost as soon as he could. Giannis has given no indication he wants to. But see how this season goes. See if instead of taking a step forward, they take a step back. And if he starts thinking, man, everyone else does have an all-star next to him. And yeah, Chris Middleton's an all-star, kind of. But so that's where, to me, the real pressure is on the organization. Giannis cares. He said, don't call me MVP again till I win it again. He's wired the right way to improve the parts of his game he needs to.
Yeah, and he will do that. He will do that. The 60%, he's a lot better than that. I don't think Giannis is going to fall into the pressure and come out the first month of the season and say it's all about the playoffs. Because it's not about the playoffs. It's about him and this team. Can they find the same chemistry they found last year? Can they win 60 games, which they did last year? Can they get home court advantage? Can he widen his game? Can he play several different styles? He was great in transition. In the half court, he wasn't as good. So those are the real goals that Giannis should have on his plate and start knocking them off month by month. Can I be Eastern Conference Player of the Year in the month of November, in the month of December? Those are the things important. You can't play the playoffs in the first 2 months of the season.
Back here with Cris Broussard, talking Rockets. So they made the blockbuster trade of this season, swapping out Chris Paul for a younger superstar in Russell Westbrook. And with Westbrook and James Harden reuniting in Houston, 2 ball-dominant guys who both play the same position, what could possibly go wrong? Well, Charles Barkley has an answer for that, saying the only way that this is going to work is if Russ gives up his point guard duties to Harden. So, Broussard, which player do you think will have to adjust their game more for this to work in Houston?
Well, there need to be a ton of adjustments from everybody, including Mike D'Antoni. Really, maybe more than anybody.
Is he
but I don't know.
Wait, come on.
No, he's a one-trick pony. And like I said, I'm in the minority.
Shots fired.
No, I'm in the minority. I might even be a minority of one. I don't know how you feel about
Hall of Famer.
I think he's a Hall of Fame coach. Like Don Nelson didn't win a ring.
Yeah, that basketball, man, they open the door to everybody.
But he is, it is a little different. It's a little different.
Jeez.
But he is a one-trick pony. That's how ball-dominant point guard with the ball. Now, so I would like him to adjust and get more ball and player movement. If he ran something like Golden State runs, I think this could work. However, I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to do his typical thing. And the one that needs to adjust most, I believe, is Harden, because he's the most capable of adjusting. Russ is Russ. Like, you can't play Russ at 2 guard and expect him to be a great shooter. He's not that. And people will go back to, well, in Oklahoma City, Harden handled the ball when he played with Russ. Russ was at the 2. Guess what? Number one, you had Kevin Durant there, who was so great that he makes everything kind of work well. And number 2, it was a different NBA. The three-pointer was not nearly as prominent.
Nope.
You also had Dwayne Wade playing off the ball with LeBron. That would be a little tougher today because you need that 2 guard to be able to shoot and stretch the floor. So I think Russ by himself in Mike D'Antoni's offense with the ball in his hands would be dynamic with the floor spread, high pick and roll, and Harden, because he is a good shooter, has a better.
But is he a good catch?
Well, he hardly did any of it last year.
Because even if he's wide open, if you run to my pat, I got to pat it a few times.
I think he's a better catch and shoot than Russ.
Well, there's no doubt about it.
I hear what you're saying.
But the other
that's why this is going to be a tough fit.
For the catch and shoot stuff for Harden, because he took 1,028 threes last year. Only 70 were catch and shoot. But that's not only because he likes to dribble. It's because no one was creating those shots for him.
They could have. Chris Paul could have.
Okay, but they weren't. My point is that, when he didn't have the ball in his hands, he wasn't as active. That's where he needs to adjust. And B, aside from Chris Paul, and even Chris Paul, they didn't have guys on that team who could beat people off the dribble. Right. Austin Rivers the only dude who could beat people off the dribble, and Austin Rivers.
Well, the team is not made that way.
Sure,
it's not made. I mean, they don't want guys to be able to beat people off the dribble because they're a team based on the analytics. Like beating someone off the dribble is not the best offensive move.
Well, but now they got someone who can in Russ, and so my point is Harden's going to have more catch and shoot opportunities. They are not going to be. What the Rockets are going to have is this. Say Harden and Westbrook both, if the way they would like it to be, play 34 minutes a night. They're going to each have then a segment of the game, 14 probably minutes, where they're out there without the other person. But the beginning of the game and the end of the game, they're going to have to be out there together and figure out how to make it work. I actually think Harden is more capable to threaten the defense without the ball than Russ is because it doesn't ruin your spacing. Right. The problem is when the ball's in Harden's hands, people, even though Chris Paul was a much diminished player, he still could shoot the lights out. And so you had to respect him at the three-point line. Guys will cheat off Russ, they will sag into the lane, and that can ruin some of what Houston does spacing-wise. Flip side to that, though, is Russ has never been on a team where when he has the ball, he's surrounded by shooting. He's never been on a team where you don't have Roberson and or Steven Adams and or Jeremy Grant in the game to where when he gets to the rim, there's someone waiting for him. They will be able to spread the court and have Russ have options the way he never had in Oklahoma City. And so I think that's an enormous upgrade for Houston. And the durability for Russ, which was one of the reasons they brought in Chris Paul, was to take some of the workload off Harden. He wasn't durable enough to do it. But yeah, of course there is, especially in the beginning, going to be an aspect of my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn for two guys who over the last 3 years have been totally used to every turn being their turn.
Yeah, let's not get confused with this, though. Let's not act as if they could trade for someone that they would have picked Russ. All right? They were stuck with Chris Paul. Chris Paul and Harden could not play another season together. They couldn't bring them back.
Sure.
Because what happened in the NBA this offseason, that was the perfect time for them to get that team together and say, you know something? Man, we should run this back. Man, we're just as good as anyone else. But no, that wasn't the case. They had to get off of Chris Paul's contract. So Nick is saying, oh, they got better. Yeah, they were forced into it because they couldn't bring Chris Paul back in that locker room. To your point, as far as they played together and Harden was the ball handler, neither one of these players had the type of resume. Neither one of these players at that time were iconic, former MVPs of the league. Neither one of them at that time had the ego that they have right now. So to steal my man Shannon, what he said on Friday, he said, man, you like ice cream?
Right.
You like mashed potatoes? I like French fries more than I like mashed potatoes. All right, but I don't like my ice cream and my French fries together. Right. Like, these two guys do not go together. They are trying to fit them together. Now, I know Anthony Davis talked about, oh, we're getting in the NBA where it's positionless. No, it's not.
Well, there's still only one ball.
You can't have a non-shooter at your shooting guard.
Right. That's hard today. Some people have mentioned Walt Clyde Frazier, Earl the Pearl Monroe in 1973.
Come on. And Walt Frazier's still wearing the suits today. But you can't play in the NBA today like that.
No question. And also, Chris, one of the things that enabled that to work was that Red Holzman ran an offense where it was ball and player movement. If you had that type of offense with this, because Russ can flash, Russ can cut. He, as athletic as he is, he could move off the ball. But they don't have that type of offense. They want you standing around and letting one guy create for everybody.
All right, let me ask you this, though, or both of you. Let's just pretend for a moment Chris Paul and James Harden got along great, that none of that stuff happened, that they were as buddy-buddy as they appear to be in the State Farm commercials. Do you think the Rockets still make this move? Because I do, because I think they're better.
No, Russ is not available.
What do you mean Russ is not available? No. Chris Paul, no. Russ is still available.
Yeah,
Paul George is gone,
traded.
and Russ is available, but Chris Paul and James Harden are as tight as they were 2 years ago. You know, all these commercials together. Because I think the Rockets, one of the reasons that Chris Paul was being shopped is because they didn't get along. But once Russ becomes available, even if they get along great, I think they make this move.
Well,
because Chris Paul's not that good, man.
The health at this stage of his career. And was that decline due to some injuries, just the fit, or what? I mean, obviously it was his worst season.
Right, but so that then brings me.
Let's just see the team that has relied on analytics more than anyone else. Let's see how this fits into their model.
But it doesn't fit their analytics. You know that.
It doesn't. But neither did bringing in Dwight Howard.
Neither did Carmelo.
Neither did bringing in Carmelo.
Jimmy Butler, who
right? Listen, they do have an analytical model, but the number one model in Houston is get me as many Team USA guys as you can find, and we'll figure it out. But they are more talented, they are younger, and they are more durable than they were last year. Now they're a worse three-point shooting team. But that's even before you talk about the disagreements within the locker room. Russell Westbrook is a far better player all around.
No one is arguing. No one even brought that conversation up.
Right.
Is Chris Paul a better player than no one? The show wouldn't last.
They're more talented, but I think Golden State showed the NBA again that it's not just all about talent. Sure, when they got Kevin Durant, they were more talented. Mm-hmm. But before that, 2015, 2016, when they won 73, individually, Steph, Clay, and Draymond aren't like blowing your mind.
You're not going to put them in some combine test and pick them. No, it's the system. It's move the ball.
That's it. And so it's not just about getting a bunch of great players and making it work. Yeah. I agree.
Nick's whole problem in this is Nick's problem. This ain't our problem. Nick's problem is Houston, Daryl Morey, and now they got one of his favorite players. It's everything.
We were talking about the Rockets.
This is Nick's problem. This ain't our problem.
Off Chris Paul and give away things to get off the contract. They instead replaced him with one of the 20 best players in the league. The fit is not perfect, but the team, which pushed Golden State more than any team's pushed a healthy Golden State, just got better, and the conversation.
We don't know if the team got better. They got more talented.
I don't know if
they got better.
Okay, so that's where we disagree. I think without question they got better.
Talk some Anthony Davis. The Brows officially announced as a Laker at his introductory press conference on Saturday. Hey, when you pair a former #1 pick and six-time All-Star in Anthony Davis next to arguably the best player of all time in LeBron James, you think the rest of the roster would just sort of fall into place. There was no falling here. The Lakers strategically built a talented team around the two stars. And if you ask Anthony Davis, he'll tell you it's pretty unstoppable, this team.
I like playing the 4. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I like playing the 4. I don't really like playing the 5. But if it comes down to it, Coach, and you need me to play the 5, then I'll play the 5. But like I said, it's the game has become so positionless that you can put 5 guys on the floor and then they just play. Obviously you guys seen the thing that came out about LJ running a point. Super tall, it's a super tall point guard. So it really doesn't matter. Just put 5 guys out there that fits best with each other and go out there and win.
I love it, Broussard. I'll play the 5. No, I won't. Not even a little bit. Do the Lakers...
He'll be playing the 5.
He's probably at some point. Do the Lakers, though, have the best roster in the NBA, echoing what Anthony Davis pretty much said there?
They certainly have a roster that can win a championship. Like, they have every reason they should go into the season thinking, we're going to win the championship. They have enough. Now, 10 years ago, it would have been over. And not because LeBron would have been 10 years younger. I'm just saying style of play. When the game was a bigger game, three-point shooting wasn't as important. With Boogie, AD, I mean, it would have been ridiculous. But even in today's game, they did improve their shooting. Danny Green, Quinn Cook, Avery Bradley's not bad, KCP, Troy Daniels. Like, they added some shooting. They obviously have size. I think they can have a devastating small lineup with AD at center, even though he may not want to play there. So, yeah, they have a roster that they should feel like they should win the championship next year.
Well, and listen, the pieces fit if everyone understands their role. Take the Anthony Davis position thing aside, because even though he's best at the 5, he's damn good at the 4.
Right.
He's first-team All-NBA when he played the 4. So we know he can do that. Like, if they just call it an average year from LeBron. If LeBron can just do what he did at year 2, forget last year, the year before when he was setting career highs, 27, 7, and 7. That's his career averages. It's also what he did starting in year 2 in this league. If he can do that, and if Anthony Davis can do what we saw him do the last time he played a full season, 75 games, 28 and 11, combined 4 blocks and steals, damn near won the MVP, first-team All-NBA. If you have those 2 players, then what you need is everyone else to play their part. You need Danny Green to be 3-and-D. You need Kyle Kuzma to give what Coach Vogel talked about, his full effort and attention to the defensive side, in addition to getting back to his rookie year level shooting. And then there's 4 of your 6. Because no team right now that has the star power the Lakers have and goes 10 deep. Right. You have the Clippers have similar star power to the Lakers. They don't go 10 deep either. They go 6, 7 guys, and then you'll see who they add in the buyout market. You'll see who they trade for during the year. The Lakers' top 6 is LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kuzma, Green, Boogie, and then the 6th, which would be Avery Bradley if he's healthy. That plus a guy they add, be it Korver, Iguodala, JR might get bought out later today, like someone else they add and someone they add the midseason, that can go eye to eye with the Clippers, with the Rockets, with the Bucks, with the Sixers. I don't think there's a clear favorite. I know some people have said the Clippers are the clear favorite. Some people said the Lakers. I don't think there is a clear favorite. I think it's heads of a different coin right now when it comes to that. And we have to see how these guys mesh. You have more confidence the Clippers meshing than the Lakers meshing, but I think the Lakers' upside is higher than that of just about any other team.
Well, the Clippers players, outside of Paul George and Kawhi, their role players are going to do exactly what they've been asked to do. And that part right there, the Lakers, we don't know that. We don't know what the buy-in. We do believe that there's tremendous just on the court what Paul George can do, what Kawhi can do with the other players that they have. And we got a lot of confidence in Doc Rivers that he's going to be able to put those pieces together. But Anthony Davis, he should have a lot of confidence when he looks at this roster. The last time that he felt confident about a roster, he was talking about him and Boogie Cousins. Rondo was the point guard. So now they got Rondo on the roster. You got Boogie Cousins. You got LeBron. You got Danny Green. You got KCP. You got Avery Bradley. Yeah, I could see why he could go to the press conference being like, absolutely.
Right.
But what I look for in the Lakers, and I hope they do this, I hope LeBron looks at AD as the primary scorer. Because if we break down AD's whole game, the weakest part of his game, and it's excellent, that's his low post game. And that's one of the reasons why he doesn't like playing against a center in the low post with his back to the bucket. Because you talk about, he has mismatches. When he's playing the 4, there ain't no 4 can guard him. And the 4 can't guard him in the low post. So you see, there is no disadvantage when he's at a 4 compared to, I know what you're talking about when he plays the 5. But he's realized, I'm first team All-NBA even at the 4. The rest of that roster, will they buy into their roles? If they have to make some starters, some bench players, will they accept that role? Like we know the Clippers down the hallway in Doc Rivers, we know that team will do. So that's the difference right now as far as the teams in L.A. But I just believe other teams around the league are going to have something to say about this.
You also have to give the Lakers some credit. We all talked about how if they don't get Kawhi, they're out of it as far as landing anyone that was going to help these two guys. And they somehow found a way to put pieces together with shooters, not like what Magic did, but with shooters that are complementary to AD and LeBron.
You have to give them an A for what they did after Kawhi.
They did a great job.
No question about that. The Lakers just have more questions. I agree with you. They're the deepest team probably in the league. They've got the best duo, LeBron and AD. I would take over Kawhi and Paul George. But is everybody going to buy in? If Boogie doesn't start or finish, is he going to buy in? Is he going to have an attitude?
Is that going to be a problem?
If Kuzma doesn't start or finish, is that going to be a problem? Do they buy into Frank Vogel? Because we know had LeBron had his druthers, Ty Lue would be the coach, and maybe Jason Kidd who's an assistant, would be the second choice, and he's right there.
And you saw they just hired Phil Handy,
yes.
former Cavs coach, and was with the Raptors last year. Vogel's got his work cut out for him as much as any coach in the league. He also has, at the top of his roster, more talent in the top two guys than any coach in the league.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.